The sound of a woman's scream tore through the sterile hospital corridor like a knife through silence. Her voice cracked with desperation, raw and primal, echoing off the cold white walls of St. Augustine Medical Center. "Where is my baby? Please. I just want to see my baby." Security guards flanked her on both sides, their hands firm on her trembling arms as they escorted her toward the exit. Her feet dragged against the polished floor, her body fighting even as her strength failed her. Nurses behind the station avoided eye contact, their faces deliberately blank, their hands busy with paperwork that suddenly seemed urgent. "Ma'am, you need to calm down," one of the guards said, his voice flat and rehearsed. "I am calm. I just want to know where my baby is." "They won't tell me anything." A nurse with blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun glanced up briefly, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. She shook her head slightly and returned to her computer screen, typing with deliberate precision. The woman's voice grew hoarse, breaking on every word. "Please. Somebody. Anybody." The automatic doors hissed open, and then she was outside, the winter air hitting her face like a slap. The doors closed behind her with a soft, final click. Inside, the hospital returned to its rhythm. Phones rang. Monitors beeped. Life continued. But something had broken that day. Something that would not stay buried. 2 years later, the same hospital would be surrounded by federal agents, news vans, and a crowd of people demanding answers. The blonde nurse would be let out in handcuffs, her face pale, her hands shaking. And the truth that had been hidden beneath layers of paperwork and lies would finally come to light. But before we get there, we need to go back. Back to the beginning. Back to when hope still lived in the heart of a young woman who believed the system would protect her. Her name was Amara Jenkins, and she was 24 years old when her life changed forever. She lived in a small apartment on the south side of the city, the kind of neighborhood where people knew each other's names and looked out for one another. The walls were thin, the carpet was worn, but it was home. She worked 2 jobs, cashier at a grocery store during the day and receptionist at a legal aid clinic 3 evenings a week, saving every penny she could. When she found out she was pregnant, she cried. Not from fear, but from overwhelming joy. She had always wanted to be a mother. Always imagined what it would feel like to hold her own child, to watch them grow, to give them the love she had received from her own mother before cancer took her 5 years ago. Amara did everything by the book. She scheduled her first prenatal appointment the moment she got a positive test. She took her vitamins religiously, cut out caffeine, read every book on pregnancy she could borrow from the library. She worked extra shifts to save up for baby clothes, a crib, diapers. Her small apartment slowly transformed, one corner filling with tiny onesies and soft blankets. Her best friend, Keisha, threw her a small baby shower. Just a handful of people crammed into Amara's living room, eating cake and playing silly games. Amara laughed until her cheeks hurt, her hand resting protectively on her swollen belly. "You're going to be an amazing mom," Keisha told her that night as they cleaned up paper plates and streamers. "I hope so," Amara said softly. "I really hope so." She chose St. Augustine Medical Center for the delivery. It had good reviews online, and her insurance covered it. The hospital was large, modern, with a reputation for excellent care. When she went for her hospital tour at 32 weeks, a cheerful nurse showed her the labor and delivery wing, the comfortable rooms, the state-of-the-art equipment. "You're in good hands here," the nurse assured her with a warm smile. Amara believed her. What Amara didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that in that same hospital, on that same floor, another woman was watching her. A woman whose smile never reached her eyes. A woman who saw Amara not as a person, but as an opportunity. Her name was Linda Carmichael, and she had been a labor and delivery nurse at St. Augustine for 17 years. To the outside world, she appeared competent, professional, experienced. She knew how to deliver babies, how to comfort anxious mothers, how to handle emergencies with calm efficiency. Her performance reviews were always satisfactory. She never made waves. But beneath the surface, Linda was drowning. It started with small bets. $5 here, $10 there,
just for fun at the casino 30 minutes outside the city. But small bets became larger bets, and fun became compulsion. She told herself she could stop any time. She told herself she was just having bad luck, that her winning streak was right around the corner. It never came. By the time Amara walked into St. Augustine for her hospital tour, Linda was $73,000 in debt. Credit cards maxed out. Loan sharks calling. Threats that made her hands shake when she held her phone. She had sold her jewelry, her car, everything of value. She lived in a studio apartment that smelled like cigarettes and desperation, jumping at every unexpected knock on the door. She needed money. Fast. A lot of it. And that's when the idea first whispered itself into her mind. Dark. Terrible. Unthinkable. Or was it? Linda had worked in labor and delivery long enough to understand how the system worked, where the gaps were, where someone careful could slip through unnoticed. She had seen it happen before, not at St. Augustine, but at a hospital where she'd done a brief stint years ago. A nurse who had been caught falsifying records, switching babies, taking money from desperate couples who wanted children and didn't ask questions. That nurse had been sloppy, stupid. She got caught. But Linda wouldn't be sloppy. She began to pay attention differently, started noticing which mothers came in alone, without partners, without family, which mothers were poor, young, black, which mothers the system was more likely to dismiss if they asked too many questions. She started making mental notes, started imagining how it could work. The really sick part, the part she would never admit even to herself, was how easy it was to justify. These women, she told herself, they couldn't provide for these children anyway. Wouldn't it be better for the babies to go to families who could give them everything? Families who wanted them desperately and had the money to pay for that chance. She was helping, really, helping everyone. That's what she told herself late at night when the shame tried to creep in. That's what she told herself when she looked in the mirror and saw her mother's eyes staring back, disappointed and sad. She pushed the feeling down. She needed this. She deserved this. Life owed her something after everything she'd been through. And then, Amara Jenkins walked into her hospital, young and alone and glowing with hope, and Linda saw her chance. The contractions started on a Tuesday night, 3 days before Amara's due date. She was watching a cooking show, trying to distract herself from the constant discomfort of the final weeks of pregnancy, when the first real contraction hit. It was different from the Braxton Hicks she'd been feeling for weeks. Sharper, deeper, more insistent. She called Keisha, who drove her to the hospital, holding her hand during contractions and telling her to breathe. The night air was cold, and Amara's breath came out in white puffs as they walked from the parking lot to the emergency entrance. "You got this, girl," Keisha kept saying. "You are so strong. You got this." They checked her in at the front desk. A nurse in blue scrubs took her vitals and confirmed she was in active labor, 4 centimeters dilated. They moved her to a delivery room, a private space with dim lighting and machines that beeped softly. Keisha stayed with her, held her hand, rubbed her back, told her she was doing great, even when Amara felt like her body was being torn apart. The hours blurred together. Pain, breathing, pressure, more pain. And then, around 3 in the morning, a new nurse came on shift. Linda Carmichael walked into the room with a professional smile, her blonde hair pulled back, her scrubs crisp and clean. She washed her hands thoroughly, snapped on gloves, and approached the bed. "Hi, Amara. I'm Linda. I'll be your nurse for the rest of your delivery. How are we doing?" "It hurts," Amara gasped between contractions. "I know, sweetheart. But you're doing so well. Let me check your progress." Linda examined her with practiced efficiency. "You're at 8 centimeters. Won't be long now. You're going to meet your baby very soon." Amara smiled through the pain, tears streaming down her face. "I can't wait." Linda smiled back. But her mind was already working, calculating, planning. She glanced at Keisha, who sat in the corner, exhausted, her head nodding forward as she fought sleep. "Air. I'll take good care of her. Keisha looked at Amara, uncertain. "It's okay," Amara said. "I'll be fine. Just for a few minutes." Keisha hesitated, then nodded. "I'll be right back." 10 minutes. The door closed behind her. Linda waited, listening to Keisha's footsteps fade down the hall. Then she turned back to Amara with that same professional smile. "Let's get you comfortable," she said, adjusting the monitors, checking the IV line, her movements calm and routine. But inside, her heart was pounding. This was it. This was the moment. If she was going to do this, it had to be now, while Amara was alone, vulnerable, focused on nothing but the pain and the baby. She had already made the arrangements. A couple, wealthy, desperate, had paid her $50,000 up front with another $50,000 promised upon delivery. They didn't ask questions. They didn't want to know details. They just wanted a baby, and they wanted it to look legal, even if it wasn't. Linda had prepared fake paperwork, created a false trail, arranged for a private adoption attorney who specialized in looking the other way. Everything was ready. All she needed was the baby. The delivery happened fast after that. Amara pushed with everything she had, her screams echoing off the walls, her body shaking with effort. Linda coached her through it, her voice steady and encouraging, playing the role of the caring nurse perfectly. "One more push, Amara. You can do this. One more." And then, at 4:47 in the morning, a baby's cry filled the room. Amara collapsed back against the pillows, sobbing with relief and joy and exhaustion. "My baby?" she gasped. "Is my baby okay?" Linda lifted the tiny, squirming infant, wrapped in a white hospital blanket. "It's a girl. A beautiful baby girl. Can I hold her? Please." Linda hesitated just for a second. Then she carried the baby over to Amara, let her see that tiny, perfect face, those dark eyes blinking in the harsh light, those little fingers curling and uncurling. "She's perfect," Amara whispered, tears streaming down her face. "She's so perfect." Linda let her hold the baby for exactly 90 seconds. Let Amara press her lips to that soft forehead, breathe in that newborn smell, feel the weight of her daughter in her arms. "I love you," Amara whispered. "I love you so much." Then Linda gently took the baby back. "I need to take her to get cleaned up and checked by the pediatrician. Standard procedure. You'll get her back soon. I promise. Okay?" Amara said, reluctant to let go but trusting the process. "Don't be gone long." "I won't." Linda carried the baby out of the room, past the nurse's station, past the other delivery rooms, to a small supply closet at the end of the hall. Her hands were shaking now, adrenaline flooding her system. She had to move fast. She switched the hospital ID bracelet on the baby's ankle with one she'd prepared earlier, one that had false information, a different mother's name. She wrapped the baby in a different blanket, placed her in a portable bassinet, and covered her with a light sheet. Then she walked, calm and professional, to the service elevator that staff used. Rode it down to the parking garage, where a woman was waiting in a black sedan, engine running, face tight, with nervous anticipation. Linda didn't say anything, just handed over the bassinet, accepted the envelope thick with cash, and turned away. The car pulled out of the garage and disappeared into the early morning darkness. Linda stood there for a moment, breathing hard, her whole body trembling. What had she done? What had she just done? But then she felt the weight of the envelope in her pocket, and the panic faded. This was survival. This was necessity. The baby would have a better life. And Amara would move on. People always did. She took a deep breath, smoothed her scrubs, and walked back into the hospital. When she returned to Amara's room, Keisha was back, sitting beside the bed, holding Amara's hand. "Where's my baby?" Amara asked immediately, her voice sharp with sudden worry. "You said you'd bring her right back." "I know, honey, I'm so sorry." Linda's face arranged itself into an expression of deep concern. There were some complications. The pediatrician noticed some breathing irregularities. They've taken her to the NICU just to be safe. Amara's eyes went wide. "What? What's wrong with her?" I want to see her. I understand, but you can't go to the NICU right now. They're running tests. The best thing you can do is rest and let them take care of her. But I held her. She was breathing fine. She was crying and everything. Sometimes things change quickly with newborns. Their little systems are fragile. But she's in excellent hands. I promise. Something in Amara's gut twisted. Something felt wrong. But she was exhausted, overwhelmed, and everyone around her seemed calm. The system was supposed to work. The hospital was supposed to keep her baby safe. When can I see her? Soon. As soon as the doctors clear it. Try to get some rest. But Amara couldn't rest. She lay in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, her arms aching to hold her daughter again. Keisha tried to comfort her, but the worry was contagious. Hours passed. Every time Amara asked for an update, she got vague answers. Breathing issues. Monitoring. Tests. Be patient. As the sun rose and morning light filtered through the blinds, a doctor Amara had never seen before entered her room. His face was grave, his movements slow and measured. He pulled up a chair beside her bed. "Miss Jenkins, I'm Dr. Patterson. I'm a neonatologist here at St. Augustine." Amara sat up straighter, her heart pounding. "Where's my baby? Can I see her now?" The doctor's pause lasted too long. "Miss Jenkins, I'm so very sorry. We did everything we could, but your daughter's heart stopped responding to treatment. Despite our best efforts, she didn't make it." The room tilted. The words didn't make sense. Amara's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "What?" Keisha's voice cracked. No, that's not. She was fine. We heard her cry. Newborns can deteriorate very quickly," the doctor said, his voice practiced and calm. "There was a congenital heart defect we didn't detect in the prenatal scans. Sometimes these things happen. There's nothing anyone could have done. I want to see her." Amara's voice was barely a whisper. "I don't think that's a good idea right now. You need time to process this. The body. It's better to remember her as she was when you held her." "I want to see my baby." Amara's scream tore from somewhere deep and primal. "Bring me my baby, Miss Jenkins. I know this is devastating, but where is she? Where is my daughter?" The doctor stood, his professional mask firmly in place. "We'll give you some time. A grief counselor will be by later to talk with you about arrangements." He left. The door closed. Amara's screams echoed through the maternity ward. If you're feeling that anger rising in your chest right now, hit that subscribe button. Because this story is only just beginning, and justice is coming. But first, we need to see exactly how deep this betrayal goes. That's how it started. That's how Linda Carmichael stole Amara Jenkins' baby and thought she'd gotten away with it. The death certificate was filed with false information. The hospital records were altered. The baby that Amara had held for 90 seconds was erased from official existence, replaced with paperwork that said she'd died of natural causes. Meanwhile, 40 miles away, in a gated community with manicured lawns and fountain features, Richard and Stephanie Morrison welcomed their new daughter into a nursery that cost more than Amara's entire apartment. Soft, pink walls. A white crib with an organic mattress. Toys that played classical music. A baby monitor with a camera that could track every breath. They named her Hannah. They had no idea she already had a name. That her mother had whispered to her in those first precious moments, told her she loved her, promised to protect her always. They believed what Linda told them, what the shady adoption attorney told them, that this was a legal private adoption, that the birth mother had signed away her rights, that everything was legitimate and above board. They didn't ask too many questions because they didn't want to know the answers. Stephanie held the baby for the first time and burst into tears. They had tried for 8 years to have a child. Fertility treatments, failed adoptions, heartbreak after heartbreak. And now, finally, they had their miracle. "She's perfect," Stephanie whispered, kissing Hannah's forehead. "She's absolutely perfect." Richard stood behind his wife, his hand on her shoulder, looking down at the infant with wonder and relief. Welcome home, baby girl. They had no idea of the other woman, the real mother, who was at that moment screaming in a hospital bed, her arms empty, her heart shattered into pieces so small she didn't know how they'd ever come back together. Back at St. Augustine, Amara refused to believe it. She couldn't. It didn't make sense. Her baby had been healthy. She'd felt her move for months. She'd heard her cry. She'd seen her eyes open. Something's wrong, she told Keisha through tears. Something doesn't add up. I know, Keisha said, though she didn't know. She was trying to be supportive, but grief was grief, and sometimes people looked for explanations that didn't exist. No, Keisha, listen to me. They won't let me see her. They won't show me a body. They won't give me straight answers. Amara, baby, I know this is impossible to accept. I'm not crazy. Something is wrong. But the hospital staff treated her like she was a grieving mother who couldn't process reality. When she demanded to see her baby's body, they gave her excuses. When she asked for an autopsy, they told her it wasn't necessary, that it would only prolong her pain. When she asked to speak to the pediatrician who supposedly treated her baby, she was told he was unavailable. She tried to file a formal complaint. The hospital's patient advocate met with her in a small, windowless office and listened with a face that showed appropriate sympathy, but offered nothing concrete. I understand your pain, Miss Jenkins, but I assure you that everything was handled according to protocol. Then show me the protocol. Show me the records. Let me see the NICU logs. Those are confidential medical documents. But I can assure you they exist, and that standard procedures were followed. You're lying. All of you are lying. The patient advocate's expression shifted slightly, became cooler. Miss Jenkins.
Miss Jenkins, I understand you're going through an incredibly difficult time. Grief can make us question things, can make us look for someone to blame. But sometimes, tragically, babies die. It's not anyone's fault. Amara stood up, her whole body shaking. My baby didn't die. I don't care what your papers say. Something happened to her, and all of you know it. She walked out of that office knowing they would never help her. The system had closed ranks. Whatever had happened, whatever had really happened, they were all protecting it. But Amara had been raised by a mother who taught her to fight, who told her that being black and poor didn't mean being powerless, who told her that truth always found a way to surface. So she started digging. She requested her medical records and read through every page, looking for inconsistencies. She found them. Timestamps that didn't match. Notes that contradicted each other. Signatures that looked rushed or forged. She tried to find the nurse who delivered her baby, Linda Carmichael. But Linda had taken a sudden leave of absence the day after Amara's delivery. When Amara called the hospital and asked to speak with her, she was told that Linda was unavailable and that patient questions should be directed to the patient advocate. Amara went to the local police, sat across from a detective who listened with arms crossed and skepticism written all over his face. Let me get this straight, he said slowly. You think the hospital stole your baby? I know they did. And you have proof of this? I have inconsistencies in my medical records. I have nurses who won't talk to me. I have a hospital that won't let me see my baby's body. The detective leaned back in his chair. Miss Jenkins, I'm sorry for your loss. I really am. But what you're describing sounds like grief, not a conspiracy. Hospitals are required to follow very strict protocols. If your baby died, there will be a death certificate, an official record. You should focus on healing, maybe talk to a therapist. You're not even going to investigate. There's nothing to investigate. I'm sorry. She tried a lawyer next, a small practice that advertised on bus benches. The attorney listened to her story, asked a few questions, then shook his head. I'm sorry, but without concrete proof, there's no case here. Hospitals have too many lawyers, too much insurance. They would bury us in paperwork and motions, and we'd never get anywhere. You'd spend money you don't have fighting a battle you can't win. So I should just give up. I'm saying you should accept what happened and find a way to move forward. But Amara couldn't move forward. How could she? Every time she closed her eyes, She saw her daughter's face, felt that tiny weight in her arms, heard that first cry. Her life began to unravel. She couldn't focus at work, kept bursting into tears at random moments. Her manager pulled her aside after she snapped at a customer who complained about a price. "Amara, I know you've been through something terrible, but you need to take some time off. Get yourself together. I need to work. I need the money. Then you need to be able to actually do the work. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to let you go." She lost the job at the legal aid clinic too. Same story. Too emotional. Too distracted. Not reliable. She fell behind on rent. Her landlord was sympathetic at first, but sympathy didn't pay bills. 3 months later, she got an eviction notice. Keisha let her crash on her couch, but the apartment was small, and Keisha had her own life, her own problems. The friendship began to strain under the weight of Amara's grief and obsession. "You need to let this go," Keisha told her one night after Amara spent hours on the phone trying to reach a hospital administrator who would never call her back. "I know it hurts, but you're destroying yourself. She's out there, Keisha." "I know she is. Amara." Keisha's voice was gentle, but firm. "Baby, she's gone. You have to accept it. Why won't anyone believe me? Because sometimes the truth is just what it is. Sometimes babies die, and it's horrible and unfair, but it's reality." Amara looked at her best friend and saw what everyone else saw when they looked at her. A broken woman. Unstable. Delusional. Someone who couldn't accept reality. She stopped talking about it after that. Stopped telling people what she believed, because every time she did, she saw that look. That mixture of pity and discomfort. That polite smile that really meant please stop talking. But she didn't stop believing. She couldn't. She got a new job, minimum wage at a call center, and rented a studio apartment in an even worse neighborhood than before. She lived quietly, kept to herself, but at night, when the city was silent and dark, she sat at her laptop and continued to search. She joined online forums for mothers who'd lost babies. She read about hospital malpractice cases. She taught herself how to file Freedom of Information requests. She created spreadsheets tracking every piece of information she could find. People around her thought she was crazy. Maybe she was. Maybe grief had broken something in her brain that would never quite heal right. But she couldn't shake the feeling, bone deep and certain, that her daughter was alive somewhere. And 2 years after she walked out of that hospital with empty arms, she would discover that her instincts had been right all along. Meanwhile, Linda Carmichael was living a different kind of hell. The $50,000 had bought her exactly 3 months of relief. She paid off her most urgent debts, kept the loan sharks from breaking her kneecaps, caught up on rent. For 90 days, she could breathe. Then it was gone. Because Linda hadn't stopped gambling. The compulsion didn't disappear just because she'd committed an unspeakable crime to feed it. If anything, it got worse. The guilt, the shame, the fear, they all fed the need to escape, to feel something other than disgust with herself. She went back to the casino, lost everything. Again. By the time she returned to work at St. Augustine after her medical leave, she was right back where she started. Broke. Desperate. Trapped. She moved through her shifts like a ghost, avoiding eye contact, speaking only when necessary. Other nurses noticed the change, whispered about it in the break room. "Linda seems different. I heard she had some kind of breakdown. She looks terrible, like she never sleeps." They weren't wrong. Linda barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Amara's face. Heard those screams echoing down the hospital corridor. Felt the weight of that baby in her arms before she handed her over to strangers. What had she done? But the question was rhetorical. She knew exactly what she'd done. And she knew she'd do it again if she got desperate enough, if the debt got bad enough, if the pressure became unbearable. That was the truly terrifying part. Not the guilt, but the knowledge that she was capable of it. That some line inside her had been crossed and could never be uncrossed. She started drinking. Just a glass of wine after shifts at first, then 2 glasses, then 3, then whatever it took to quiet the screaming in her head.
She showed up to work hungover, irritable, making small mistakes that she'd never made before. A nurse supervisor pulled her aside after she snapped at a patient. "Linda, is everything okay? Do you need to take some more time off?" "I'm fine. Just tired." "You don't seem fine. If something's going on." "I said I'm fine." The supervisor backed off, but Linda could see the concern in her eyes. People were watching her now, noticing things. She needed to be more careful, so she pulled herself together, forced a smile, played the role of the competent nurse she used to be. But inside, she was rotting, piece by piece, day by day. And in the back of her mind, always was the fear. What if someone found out? What if Amara never stopped digging? What if the truth came out? She told herself it wouldn't. Told herself she'd been careful, that the paperwork was solid, that no one would ever connect the dots. But late at night, when the alcohol wore off and reality crashed back in, she wasn't so sure. The turning point came on a random Thursday afternoon, 2 years and 3 months after Amara's baby was taken. Amara was at the community health clinic, waiting for a free counseling session. She'd been going once a month, not because she thought it would help, but because it was something to do. A place where someone would listen without judgment, even if they didn't believe her. She sat in the waiting room, flipping through an old magazine without reading it, when a woman walked in. Black, maybe mid-30s, wearing a sharp gray suit and carrying a leather briefcase that had seen better days but was clearly expensive. She had the kind of presence that made people notice, made them sit up straighter. The woman spoke to the receptionist, then took a seat across from Amara. They sat in silence for a few moments. Then the woman's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, sighed, and answered. "Michelle Porter." A pause. "No. I told you we need the hospital records before we can proceed with the deposition." "I don't care what they say. They're required to provide for them." Another pause. "Because it's the law. Because they don't get to hide behind HIPAA when there's evidence of malpractice. Because we have 3 families with almost identical stories and someone needs to answer for it." Amara's head snapped up. The woman continued, her voice firm and frustrated. "Listen, I've been doing this for 15 years. I know when a hospital is covering something up. The patterns are too consistent. The paperwork is too clean. Something happened to these babies, and I'm going to find out what." She listened for a moment. "I'll be back in the office in an hour. Have the files ready." She hung up and rubbed her temples, clearly stressed. Amara's heart was pounding. She shouldn't say anything. This woman was clearly busy, important, dealing with her own cases. But something in that phone conversation had reached into Amara's chest and squeezed. "Excuse me," Amara said quietly. The woman looked up, her expression guarded but polite. "Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but you said something about babies and hospitals covering things up." The woman's eyes sharpened, focused. "Why do you ask?" "Because," Amara's voice caught. She'd told this story so many times to so many people who didn't believe her. Why would this be different? But she had to try. "Because I think something happened to my baby. 2 years ago. At St. Augustine Medical Center." The woman sat up straighter. "Tell me more." So Amara did. She told her everything. The delivery. The nurse. The sudden claim that her baby died. The refusal to show her the body. The inconsistencies in the records. The way the hospital shut down every question. The woman listened without interrupting, her face growing more intent with every detail. When Amara finished, the woman was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled a business card from her briefcase and handed it to Amara. "My name is Michelle Porter. I'm a civil rights attorney. I specialize in cases of medical discrimination and malpractice, particularly involving Black mothers. And I think you need to come to my office as soon as possible." Amara stared at the card, her hands trembling. "You believe me?" Michelle's expression was fierce and sad at the same time. "I believe you. And I think your story might be connected to something much bigger than you realize. If you want to see justice done, if you want to see how this story ends, make sure you're subscribed. Hit that bell icon so you don't miss what happens next. and drop a comment telling me what you would do if you were in Amara's shoes. Because this fight is about to get real. Michelle Porter's office was small, located on the second floor of a building that had seen better decades. The carpet was worn, the furniture was mismatched, but the walls were covered with framed newspaper clippings. Local attorney wins settlement for discriminated patient. Civil rights lawyer takes on major hospital. Justice for the voiceless. Amara sat across from Michelle's desk, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold while she talked. She'd been there for almost 2 hours, going through every detail again, more thoroughly this time. Michelle took notes on a yellow legal pad, her handwriting quick and precise. When Amara finished, Michelle set down her pen and leaned back in her chair. "Okay," she said. "Here's what I know. 3 other women have come to me in the last 18 months with remarkably similar stories. All black. All young. All poor or working class. All gave birth at St. Augustine Medical Center. All were told their babies died shortly after delivery. And in every single case, there were irregularities in the records." Amara's breath caught. 3 other women. 3 that I know of. There could be more who never came forward, who believed what they were told, who didn't have the strength to keep fighting. What kind of irregularities? Michelle pulled a file folder from her desk drawer, spread several documents across the desk. "Look at this. Mother number 1, her baby supposedly died of respiratory distress. But the NICU records show no admission under that baby's name on that date. Mother number 2 told her baby had a heart defect. But the prenatal records show multiple ultrasounds with perfectly normal cardiac function. Mother number 3, same story as yours. Told the baby died, never allowed to see the body, medical records that don't add up." Amara stared at the papers, her vision blurring with tears. "So I'm not crazy. I was right. You were absolutely right. And I'm going to prove it." Michelle's voice was steel-wrapped in velvet. "But I need you to understand something. This is going to be hard. Hospitals have power. They have lawyers. They have money. They will fight us every step of the way. They'll try to discredit you, to make you look unstable or vindictive. They'll drag this out for years if they can. I don't care how long it takes. Good. Because we're going to need that determination." Michelle pulled out a fresh legal pad. "Now, I need you to tell me everything you remember about the nurse who delivered your baby. Every detail, no matter how small." Amara closed her eyes, brought herself back to that night. Her name was Linda Carmichael. Blonde hair, pulled back tight. Blue scrubs. She had this smile that seemed professional, but now when I think about it, she paused. There was something off about her eyes, like she was performing, not actually present. Michelle wrote quickly. Did she seem nervous? Distracted? Not nervous exactly. More like determined. Focused. She kept looking at the clock like she was timing something. What else?
She insisted my friend leave the room. Said she should get coffee. And then as soon as Keisha was gone, Amara's voice broke. That's when everything happened fast. The delivery, taking my baby away, all of it. Michelle's pen moved across the page. Did you notice anything unusual about the paperwork? Did she have you sign anything? I don't remember signing anything. I was so focused on the pain, on having my baby. And then after, when they told me she died, I was in shock. They kept giving me papers to sign, but I couldn't even read them properly. That's okay. We'll get copies of everything. Now here's what we're going to do. Michelle leaned forward, her expression intense. First, I'm filing a formal complaint with the state medical board. Second, I'm requesting all medical records for you and the other mothers. Third, I'm going to start interviewing every staff member who was working that night. Someone knows something. Someone always does. What if they all lie? What if they're all covering it up? Then we find the weak link. There's always someone who can't live with the guilt, who's willing to talk. We just have to find them. Over the next 3 months, Michelle Porter worked like a woman possessed. She filed motions, sent subpoenas, made phone calls, knocked on doors. She interviewed nurses who'd worked at St. Augustine, asking careful questions about protocol, about unusual incidents. about Linda Carmichael. Most of them gave her nothing. Polite, professional, carefully neutral answers that revealed exactly nothing. But there was one nurse, a young woman named Sarah Chen, who'd only been at St. Augustine for 6 months before quitting suddenly, who agreed to meet with Michelle off the record. They met at a coffee shop 30 minutes from the hospital, far enough that no one from work would see them. Sarah looked nervous, kept glancing at the door like she expected someone to walk in and catch her. "I don't know if I should be talking to you," Sarah said, stirring her latte without drinking it. "You're not doing anything wrong," Michelle assured her. "I just want to understand what the environment was like at St. Augustine. What you observed while you were there." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she took a deep breath. "Linda Carmichael scared me." Michelle's pulse quickened, but she kept her expression calm. Why? Because she was too good at lying. Too comfortable with it. Sarah finally met Michelle's eyes. "I only worked with her a few times, but I noticed things. She would change information in patient charts after the fact. Small things usually, timing of medications, dosages. Nothing that would get flagged by the system, but enough that I noticed. Did you report it?" "I mentioned it to my supervisor. She told me Linda had been there for years, that she knew what she was doing, that I should focus on my own work and stop questioning senior staff." Sarah's hands tightened around her cup. "After that, Linda started watching me. Not in an obvious way, but I could feel it. She'd show up in rooms when I was working, hover, check my charts. It felt like intimidation. Did anything else happen?" Sarah hesitated, clearly wrestling with whether to continue. "There was one night, about a week before I quit. I was walking past a supply closet and heard voices. Linda was in there with someone I didn't recognize, a woman in regular clothes, not hospital staff. They were arguing in whispers, but I heard Linda say something like, 'I need more time,' and they're asking questions. And the other woman said you were supposed to be careful or something like that. Do you remember what the other woman looked like? Professional. Dark hair, expensive clothes. She had this briefcase with her. I remember thinking she looked like a lawyer or something. And what did you do?' I walked away. Pretended I hadn't heard anything. But after that, I couldn't sleep. Something was wrong, really wrong, and I didn't want to be part of it. So I quit. Gave 2 weeks notice and got out." Michelle wrote everything down. "Would you be willing to testify to this?" Sarah's face went pale. "I don't know. I have a new job now. If they found out I was involved in some kind of investigation, I understand. But think about this. If Linda Carmichael did what I think she did, if she took babies from their mothers and sold them, don't those mothers deserve justice?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I know. I know they do. I'm scared. I know you are. And I'm not going to pressure you. But if you change your mind, if you decide you can help us, call me." Michelle handed her a card. "Anytime. Day or night." Sarah took the card and slipped it into her pocket. They talked for a few more minutes, then parted ways. Michelle watched her walk to her car, shoulders hunched, clearly carrying the weight of what she knew. Back at her office, Michelle added Sarah's information to her growing file. She had testimony now, not just circumstantial evidence. She had a pattern. She had multiple victims. She had a nurse who scared her own colleagues. She called Amara that evening. We're getting somewhere. I can feel it. The walls are starting to crack. How long until we know for sure? Amara asked, and Michelle could hear the exhaustion in her voice. The toll that 2 years of fighting had taken. I don't know. Good. I promise you, I'm not giving up. Neither should you. I won't. I can't. Good. Because we're going to need that strength. This is about to get a lot harder before it gets better. Michelle was right. When St. Augustine Medical Center received the formal complaint and record requests, they went into full defensive mode. Their lawyers sent back a 17-page response, denying all allegations, calling the claims baseless and defamatory, threatening countersuits for harassment and emotional distress. They refused to release certain records, claiming patient privacy and confidentiality. They claimed other records had been destroyed according to standard retention policies. They denied that Linda Carmichael had done anything inappropriate. Michelle fought them on every point, filing motions, arguing before judges, refusing to back down. It was slow, frustrating work, the kind that could break even experienced attorneys. But Michelle had something St. Augustine's lawyers didn't count on. She had righteous anger. She had mothers who'd been told their babies were dead when they were really alive somewhere, stolen and sold. She had victims who deserved truth. And then, 9 months into the investigation, they got their break. A junior nurse named Jennifer Martinez, who'd worked at St. Augustine for 3 years, contacted Michelle's office. She'd heard about the investigation through the hospital grapevine, and she had information. Michelle met with her the same day. Jennifer sat in Michelle's office, her hands shaking, tears already forming. I should have said something earlier. I should have, but I was scared. I have kids. I need this job. It's okay. Michelle said gently. You're here now. That's what matters. Tell me what you know. I worked the night shift the same time as Linda sometimes. And I noticed she would take babies out of the delivery rooms and be gone for longer than normal. Like, way longer. It would sometimes be 30, 40 minutes before she brought them back from getting cleaned up and weighed. Did you ask her about it? Once. She said she'd gotten pulled into helping with another delivery, that it took longer than expected. But I checked the logs and there were no other deliveries happening at that time. What else? I saw her in the parking garage once, around 3 a.m., talking to someone in a car. She handed them something. I couldn't see what, and they handed her an envelope. When she saw me, she looked panicked. Said it was her sister, that she was just dropping something off. But the woman in the car didn't look anything like Linda. Can you describe the woman? Professional looking. Dark hair. Expensive car. Same description Sarah Chen had given for the woman in the supply closet. Michelle felt electricity run through her. The pieces were connecting. Is there anything else? Anything at all? Jennifer pulled out her phone. I took photos. Of the schedule, of the times when babies went missing from records, of Linda's shift patterns. I didn't know what I was documenting, but something felt wrong, so I kept track. She handed the phone to Michelle, who scrolled through dozens of images. Schedules. Logs. Notes. All meticulously documented. Jennifer, this is incredible. This is exactly what we need. There's more. Jennifer's voice dropped to a whisper. I think I know where she keeps records. Linda has a locker in the staff break room. I've seen her put things in there, papers and files that she doesn't want in the official system. If you could get a warrant to search it. Michelle was already reaching for her phone. Jennifer, you might have just cracked this case wide open. Within 2 weeks, Michelle had enough evidence to convince a judge to issue search warrants. Not just for Linda's locker, but for her apartment, her car, her personal storage unit. The day the warrants were executed, Amara waited in Michelle's office, pacing, unable to sit still, unable to breathe properly. Keisha was there too, having taken the day off work to support her friend. What if they don't find anything? Amara asked for the 10th time. They will. Michelle said with more confidence than she felt. They have to. At 2:47 p.m., Michelle's phone rang. She answered, listened, her expression changing from tense to shocked to triumphant. When she hung up, she turned to Amara with tears in her eyes. They found it. They found everything. In Linda's storage unit, hidden in a locked filing cabinet beneath old clothes and boxes, investigators found records. Detailed records. Names, dates, amounts paid. 5 babies over 3 years. 5 mothers who'd been told their children died. 5 families who'd paid anywhere from $50,000 to $150,000 for private adoptions that were anything but legal. They found bank statements showing deposits that lined up with the dates of the deliveries. They found emails between Linda and the adoption broker, whose name was Patricia Henshaw, discussing arrangements, payouts, logistics. They found photos of the babies, before and after, including one of a newborn girl with dark skin and perfect features, taken on the night of February 18th, 2 years prior. Amara's baby.
When Michelle showed her the photo, Amara collapsed. Not from shock, but from vindication. From relief so intense, it was almost painful. She's alive, Amara sobbed. My baby's alive. Yes, Michelle confirmed. And we're going to bring her home. Make sure you're still with me, because this is where everything changes. Hit that like button if you believe in justice, and drop a comment telling me how you think Linda should be punished. Because what happens next is going to blow your mind. The arrest happened at St. Augustine Medical Center during Linda's shift. Federal agents walked onto the labor and delivery floor at 6 a.m., badges out, faces grim. Linda saw them coming and knew immediately. She tried to run, actually turned and sprinted toward the service stairs, but there was nowhere to go. They caught her at the stairwell door, pressed her against the wall, read her rights while nurses and patients watched in shock. Linda Carmichael, you're under arrest for kidnapping, child trafficking, fraud, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. Linda's face was white as paper. She didn't fight, didn't speak. Just let them cuff her hands behind her back and lead her out through the same corridor where, 2 years earlier, Amara had screamed for her baby. Patricia Henshaw, the adoption broker, was arrested the same morning at her office in downtown. Her expression was different than Linda's. Not shocked, but angry, calculating. Already thinking about lawyers and bail and how to minimize damage, the adoptive families were another matter entirely. Richard and Stephanie Morrison were at home when the authorities arrived. Hannah, now 2 years old, was playing in the living room with her toys, singing to herself in that beautiful nonsense language that toddlers speak. When the social workers explained why they were there, Stephanie's scream could be heard 3 houses away. No, you can't take her. She's ours. We adopted her legally. Mrs. Morrison, I understand this is devastating, but the adoption was not legal. This child was stolen from her biological mother. We didn't know. We didn't know anything was wrong. Richard stood frozen, his face gray, looking at Hannah like he was already losing her. There must be some mistake. Patricia assured us everything was legitimate. We have papers. We have documentation. The documentation was falsified. I'm so sorry, but this child needs to be returned to her biological mother. Please. Stephanie fell to her knees. Please, she's my daughter. She doesn't even know anyone else. This will traumatize her. I understand. And we'll do everything we can to make this transition as gentle as possible. But she has a mother who never stopped looking for her. A mother who deserves to have her daughter back. They let the Morrisons say goodbye. It took over an hour, both of them sobbing, holding Hannah, trying to explain in words a 2-year-old couldn't possibly understand why Mommy and Daddy were so sad. Hannah, confused by the crying, patted Stephanie's face. Mama sad. Yes, baby. Mama's very sad. But you're going to meet someone who loves you very much. Okay? Okay. The social worker gently took Hannah from Stephanie's arms. The little girl started crying then, reaching back for the only parents she'd ever known, calling for Mama and Daddy. It was the worst moment of the Morrisons' lives, and it was about to be the best moment of Amara's. The reunion happened in a neutral location, a family services office designed for exactly these kinds of situations. Amara had prepared for this moment for 2 years, imagined it 1,000 different ways, but nothing could prepare her for the reality. The door opened. A social worker walked in carrying a little girl with dark curls and light brown skin, and eyes that Amara would have recognized anywhere because they were her own eyes staring back at her. Time stopped. Amara, the social worker said gently, this is your daughter. Amara couldn't speak, couldn't move, could barely breathe. She just stared at this beautiful child who was hers, who had always been hers, who she'd held for 90 seconds before she was stolen. The little girl looked at her with curiosity and a hint of fear, this stranger who was crying and smiling at the same time. Hi, sweetheart. Amara finally managed to whisper. I'm your mama. Your first mama. She didn't expect the child to recognize her. How could she? Hannah had been stolen at birth, had grown up with other parents, had no memory of those first precious moments. But Amara slowly knelt down, held out her hands, and started to sing. A lullaby she'd sung when she was pregnant, the one she'd hummed those first 90 seconds while holding her newborn. And something flickered in Hannah's eyes. Some deep cellular memory. some recognition that went beyond conscious thought. The little girl tilted her head, listening. Then, tentatively, she took a step forward, then another. Amara kept singing, tears streaming down her face, her voice breaking but continuing. And Hannah walked into her arms. Amara wrapped her daughter in the embrace she'd been denied for 2 years, buried her face in those soft curls, breathed in the scent of her child, and sobbed with relief and joy and grief for all the time they'd lost. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you. But I never stopped looking. I never stopped believing you were alive. And now you're here. You're finally here." Hannah pulled back slightly, looked at Amara's face, touched her tears. "Sad? No, baby. These are happy tears. The happiest tears. Because I found you. I finally found you." Keisha, who'd been standing in the corner trying not to sob, lost the battle and broke down. Michelle Porter, the attorney who'd fought so hard to make this moment possible, wiped her own eyes. The social worker, who'd done this job for 15 years and thought she'd seen everything, had to step out of the room to compose herself. This was why she did this work. For moments like this. For justice that looked like a mother holding her stolen child. The transition wasn't easy. Hannah was confused, grieving the loss of the only parent she'd known, struggling to understand why everything had changed. The court ordered supervised visitation at first, then gradual integration therapy for everyone involved. Amara was patient. She'd waited 2 years. She could wait however long it took for her daughter to feel safe and loved. She sang that lullaby every night, read stories, played games, built trust slowly, brick by brick. And Hannah, with the resilience of children, began to adapt, began to smile more, began to call Amara Mama without prompting. 6 months after the reunion, Hannah climbed into Amara's lap unprompted, wrapped her little arms around her neck, and whispered, "Love you, Mama." Amara held her close and thanked God and her own stubbornness and every person who'd helped bring her baby home. The trial was a media sensation. Linda Carmichael's face was plastered across every news channel, every website. Nurse accused of trafficking babies. Hospital baby theft ring exposed. Mother's 2-year fight leads to shocking discovery. Linda's defense attorney tried to paint her as a victim of circumstances. Someone driven by debt and addiction. Someone who made terrible choices but didn't deserve to have her life destroyed. The prosecutor had a different story. She brought mother after mother to the stand. Women who'd been told their babies died. Women who'd been dismissed and silenced and called crazy. Women whose grief had been weaponized against them. Amara testified last. She wore her best dress, spoke clearly and firmly, looked Linda directly in the eyes as she recounted every detail of that night. "You took my baby while she was still covered in my blood," Amara said, her voice steady despite the tears. "You looked me in the eyes and lied. You told me she was dead. You destroyed me. You made me believe I was crazy for trusting my own instincts. And you did it for money, for gambling money." Linda couldn't hold her gaze. She looked down at the table, her shoulders shaking. "But here's what you didn't know," Amara continued. "You didn't know that I was stronger than you thought. You saw a poor black woman and assumed I was powerless. You thought I would accept what you told me and move on. You were wrong." The courtroom was silent. "I want you to understand something. You didn't just steal my baby. You stole 2 years of her life that I'll never get back. First steps I didn't see. First words I didn't hear. Birthdays and holidays and ordinary moments that were stolen from both of us. You can't give that back. No sentence can give that back." Linda was crying now, ugly gasping sobs. "But at least I got my daughter back. At least I found the truth. How many other mothers weren't as lucky? How many other babies disappeared and were never found? That's what you have to live with. That's your punishment every day for the rest of your life." The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They found Linda guilty on all counts. Kidnapping, child trafficking,
Fraud, conspiracy. The judge sentenced her to 25 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. Patricia Henshaw, the adoption broker, got 30 years. St. Augustine Medical Center faced a separate investigation. It was revealed that hospital administrators had ignored warning signs, had dismissed complaints about Linda's behavior, had prioritized protecting their reputation over protecting patients. The hospital settled with Amara and the other mothers for an undisclosed amount. It was enough to ensure Hannah would have everything she needed, that Amara would never have to worry about money again. More importantly, the hospital was forced to implement new protocols, new oversight, new systems to prevent anything like this from ever happening again. 3 executives resigned. 5 administrators were fired. The entire labor and delivery department was restructured. But money and policy changes couldn't undo what had been done. Couldn't give back what had been taken. The other 4 families whose babies had been stolen faced their own difficult journeys. 2 of the children were successfully reunited with their biological mothers after long, painful transitions. One of the adoptive families fought in court, claiming they'd bonded with the child and that removal would be traumatic. It took 18 months of legal battles before that child was finally returned to her biological mother. The 5th baby was never found. The paperwork had been too well hidden, the trail too cold. That mother, a woman named Tasha Williams, attended every court hearing, held every press conference, never stopped searching. "If you have my son," she said to the cameras, her voice breaking, "please bring him home. Please. He has a mother who loves him, who never stopped loving him." Her pleas went viral. Millions of people shared her story. And somewhere, hopefully, someone would see it and do the right thing. A year after the trial, Amara stood in front of a packed auditorium at a conference for child advocacy. Hannah was at home with Keisha, finally stable enough that Amara could leave her for a few hours without panic. Amara had been invited to speak about her experience, about the fight for justice, about what happens when mothers refuse to be silenced. She stood at that podium, looked out at hundreds of faces, and spoke with the authority of someone who'd walked through hell and come out the other side. "They thought I would give up," she said. "They thought that because I was young and black and poor, I would accept what they told me. They thought I was powerless." She paused, let the words settle. But they forgot something important. They forgot what a mother is capable of when someone tries to take her child. They forgot that love is stronger than any system, any institution, any lie they could tell. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. "I'm standing here today to tell you that if you're fighting for your child, if you know in your gut that something is wrong, if everyone is telling you to give up but you can't, don't stop. Don't ever stop. Because you might be right. And your child might be out there waiting for you to find them. Be loud. Be inconvenient. Be the mother they underestimated. Because the truth always finds a way to surface if someone is brave enough to keep digging." The applause started slowly, then built until the entire auditorium was standing, clapping, some people crying, all of them moved by the story of one mother who refused to accept injustice. After the speech, dozens of people approached Amara. Some wanted to share their own stories of fighting systems that tried to silence them. Some wanted advice. Some just wanted to shake her hand to thank her for speaking up. An older black woman with gray hair and kind eyes waited until the crowd thinned, then approached Amara with tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she whispered. "My daughter lost her baby 20 years ago. They told her the same thing, that the baby died, that there was nothing to investigate. She never believed them, but back then, nobody would listen. She died 5 years ago, still believing her child was out there somewhere." The woman's voice broke. "Watching you fight, watching you win, it gave me hope that maybe somewhere my grandchild is alive. Maybe one day I'll find out the truth. Thank you for showing me that it's possible." Amara hugged her tightly. "Keep searching. Keep hoping. Don't let them silence you." That night, back at her apartment, Amara sat on the couch with Hannah curled up beside her, sleeping peacefully. She stroked her daughter's curls, marveled at the weight of her, the realness of her, the miracle that she was here at all. Michelle Porter had called earlier to check in. "You were amazing today. The video of your speech is already going viral. You're inspiring people. I just told the truth. That's exactly what makes it powerful. You refuse to let them rewrite your story." After they hung up, Amara sat in the quiet darkness, thinking about the last 2 years. The pain, the grief, the moments she almost gave up. The people who told her she was crazy. The system that tried to break her. And she thought about Linda Carmichael, sitting in a prison cell somewhere,
living with what she'd done. Amara didn't feel satisfaction in Linda's punishment, didn't feel vindication in her suffering. She just felt tired, tired of fighting, tired of being angry, but also grateful. Grateful that she'd listened to her instincts. Grateful for Michelle Porter and Sarah Chen and Jennifer Martinez and every person who'd helped expose the truth. Grateful for Keisha, who never truly believed, but supported her anyway. Grateful for second chances and resilient children and justice that sometimes, against all odds, actually happens. Hannah stirred in her sleep, mumbled something unintelligible, then settled back down with her thumb in her mouth. Amara kissed her forehead. "I've got you, baby girl, and I'm never letting go again." 6 months later, Amara and Hannah were featured in a major news magazine. The article, titled "The Mother Who Never Stopped Searching," told their story in detail, explored the systemic issues that allowed Linda's crimes to continue for so long, and asked the difficult questions about how many other cases might be out there, undiscovered and unresolved. The article ended with Amara's words. "They thought poor meant powerless. They forgot what a mother is capable of." The story sparked a national conversation. Congress held hearings about hospital oversight and adoption fraud. New laws were proposed. Patient advocacy groups mobilized. And mothers across the country who'd been dismissed and silenced found the courage to speak up, to demand answers, to refuse to accept explanations that didn't make sense. 3 more cases similar to Amara's were uncovered at other hospitals. 2 more babies were reunited with their biological families. The FBI opened a task force specifically focused on identifying and investigating potential baby trafficking rings in medical facilities. Change was happening. Slowly, imperfectly, but happening. And at the center of it all was Amara Jenkins, a young black woman who'd been underestimated by everyone except herself. Who'd trusted her instincts when no one else would. Who'd fought a system designed to silence her and won. Now, as Hannah approached her 3rd birthday, the trauma of the separation was beginning to fade. She called Amara Mama without hesitation. She laughed easily. She was secure in the knowledge that she was loved, protected, wanted. Amara had enrolled in community college, studying to become a patient advocate herself. She wanted to help other families navigate systems that tried to intimidate them. Wanted to be the voice for people who felt voiceless. Wanted to turn her pain into purpose. On Hannah's 3rd birthday, they had a small party. Just Keisha and a few of Hannah's friends from daycare and Michelle Porter, who'd become not just Amara's attorney, but her friend. As they sang happy birthday and Hannah blew out her candles with delight, Amara felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the absence of pain or memory, but the presence of something stronger. Hope, joy, contentment. She'd survived the worst thing that could happen to a mother. She'd fought an impossible fight and won. She'd gotten her daughter back. And every single day, every laugh, every hug, every bedtime story was a victory over the people who tried to destroy her. That night, after the party ended and Hannah was asleep, Amara sat at her laptop and typed out a message to post on the advocacy page she'd started. To every mother who's been told to stop asking questions, who's been called crazy or emotional or difficult for trusting their instincts, you are not powerless. You are not alone. Your voice matters. Your truth matters. Don't let anyone silence you. Keep fighting. Keep speaking. Keep believing. Because justice might take time, but it's possible. I'm living proof. She hit post and watched as, within minutes, comments started flooding in. Mothers thanking her, sharing their own stories, finding strength in her words. This was her legacy now. Not just getting her own daughter back, but helping other mothers find the courage to fight for theirs. She thought about Linda Carmichael, sitting in that prison cell, and wondered if she understood yet. Understood that you can't build happiness on someone else's suffering. That you can't steal love and expect it to fill the emptiness inside you. That some debts can never be paid, some choices can never be undone. And she thought about the system that had enabled Linda's crimes, the hospital that looked the other way, The administrators who chose reputation over truth. The people who dismissed grieving mothers because it was easier than investigating. They'd all learned a hard lesson. That poor doesn't mean powerless. That black mothers matter. That some people will fight until they find the truth, no matter how long it takes or how hard the system tries to break them. If you've made it this far, if this story moved you, inspired you, made you angry or hopeful or both, then do me a favor. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss stories like this. Hit that like button to tell the algorithm that justice matters, that these stories need to be told. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's fighting their own battle against a system that's trying to silence them. And drop a comment below telling me what you think should happen to people who abuse their power like Linda did. Your voice matters. Use it. The story of Amara Jenkins and her stolen daughter should never have happened. But because it did, because Amara refused to give up, because she fought against impossible odds and won, dozens of other families found justice too. Laws were changed. Policies were reformed. Hospitals were held accountable. One mother's refusal to be silenced created ripples that spread across the entire country. That's the power of persistence. The power of believing in yourself when no one else does. The power of love that refuses to accept defeat. Linda Carmichael thought she was stealing from someone who couldn't fight back. She was wrong. Amara Jenkins proved that poor doesn't mean powerless, that young doesn't mean weak, that black doesn't mean voiceless. She proved that a mother's love is the most powerful force in the world. And she got her daughter back. That's not just a story. That's justice. If this resonated with you, make sure you're part of this community. Subscribe, like, comment, share. Because these stories matter. These voices matter. And together, we can make sure that justice isn't just possible. It's inevitable. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. And thank you for believing that one person can make a difference. Because Amara Jenkins just proved that they can. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel and tell us exactly where you are watching from.